I certainly think affairs have been, around the place since Adam was a cowboy. I mean, let's not beat around the bush about that one. I mean, affairs happen not only in Parliament. I mean, they happen down at the local supermarket and, throughout all walks of life in New Zealand. And are they right? No. It's not particularly pleasant for anyone to enter into that sort of behaviour. Does it happen? Yes. Are there all sorts of reasons why it happens? Yes. But what is more serious is when it's unsolicited or the consent of that relationship is not meaningful, is no longer meaningful.
And you're meaning that about yourself and Jami-Lee Ross?
Yeah, I think it came to a point that I didn't want to be in that situation any longer. However, I struggled with how I was going to get out, and equally was frightened of the ramifications of getting out. And at that point, you're in a very serious situation if you're starting to question that.
The situation that Sarah Dowie found herself in would later be a factor in her decision to leave politics after just 2 terms in Parliament. Back in 2018, the Invercargill MP's career was on the rise. She had made it into the top 20 in the party rankings and been promoted from the backbench to be conservation spokesperson. The former lawyer looked set for a long and successful career, but lurking in the background was her relationship with Ross, and she says she became caught in his web of manipulation. The 2 national MPs had first met when Dowie was seeking the nomination for the Invercargill seat in 2014. She says Ross, already a party whip, was very helpful in providing her with advice. He continued to offer her help and support when she won the seat and arrived in Wellington.
When I was a new MP, of course I needed to find accommodation, and one of the things that Jami-Lee Ross pointed out to me on a number of different occasions was that he had an apartment, a 2-bedroom, 2-bathroom apartment, and he was looking for a flatmate. I initially wanted my own place, and obviously have my husband and my 2 children come to stay quite regularly. But he continued to persist. I said no several times, but in the end I weakened when he said, look, just try it out, give it a trial period, and if you don't like it, you can move out, and we can go from there.
From her Invercargill home, Dowie explains how she confided in Ross that she was having problems in her marriage. Ross, she says, played the long game, pouring attention on her. Then came the love bombing, before resorting to more controlling behaviour.
Love bombing is a rapid fire period of contact where it's almost like an explosion of emotion. Lots of flattery, lots of building you up, and you're left spinning and thinking, my goodness, this person is so amazing. I've never had a friendship like this, or I've never met a man like this.
It's all too good to be true.
It's all too good to be true. So our honeymoon phase, so to speak, lasted about 6 months. But then you go into a devaluation stage where these characters see your flaws because you're human, and they start to pick on them basically, and what we term gaslight you. So that's where they spin arguments around to make it look like you're to blame, or they will completely deny statements that they've made. Basically that is designed to make you feel like very unstable footing. You don't understand quite what's going on. You can't comprehend what the reality is. For example, I remember one day I went to Parliament and I said to a colleague, I said, look, am I dressed appropriately? And he said to me, yes. What do you mean? And I just said, just somebody said to me that, I'm not dressed appropriately, that this dress is too short. And it was just on the knee, So ordinarily I would be, a confident woman, quite capable of dressing myself. But when you get a barrage of those constant quips, it is designed to make you uneasy and to question your judgment, so that you have to lean more on that person and you're more reliant on them. So that gives him more control.
And what, the next day you're saying, do I look all right?
Exactly, yeah. Or do you like me in this? And he may say, no, actually, I like you in this other one.
And you'd get changed. You're totally destabilised
and disorientated.
Because what is said about you, in articles is Sarah Dowie. She's married. She's got 2 kids. She had an affair. It went sour. She was 10 years older than him. She's an ex-lawyer. She's a smart woman. Now, come on.
Yeah. And I am a smart woman. And every day I question, how could I have got caught up in this? But it absolutely happens, and I'm not the only one.
According to Dowie, Jami-Lee Ross made her so unsure of herself and so insecure that he was now able to control most aspects of her life. When he rejected her, instead of running away, she became desperate for his attention. And what happens when that level of control takes over?
Yeah, well, it's so confusing, right? Because you've started with this relationship that it's almost like you think that this person is your soulmate, and you're just constantly trying to get that level of understanding back in your relationship. But with the cycles that run, the devaluation and then the discard and then the love bombing again and then the devaluation and the discard, and as those cycles continue, they get shorter and shorter, and you're wrapped up in it and wrapped up in it, and the love bombing phase gets smaller and smaller. You become so bewildered and so confused, you literally don't know which way is up, which way is down. You start to struggle to make decisions for yourself. And that whole process is designed for you to try and attach yourself even more to that person, that character, for approval and for meaning, and just to help you with your daily functioning, basically. So when he withdrew that attention or discarded me, you would think, I should be thinking, well, great, I'm out. Let's run away and get some clarity on that situation. Actually, the initial phases of that discard, that breakup, is no, I need to seek approval and validation from this person again. I've got to be better. I've got to be better as a person. And so you're constantly running that cycle to get back in his good books and make excuses for his bad behaviour.
Then he has complete control over you, is that what you're saying?
Pretty much.
Did he sexually violate you as well?
I prefer not to get into that, but as we've talked before, there's a difference between consent and meaningful consent. So, definitely these characters use sex as a weapon. That's what they do. If that's the type of relationship that you have with them.
And you did, and that was what was happening with you?
I don't want to get into a he said, she said. I guess the reason I'm not being direct right now with you is that there is concern, and I'm sure other victims/survivors have concerns about ramifications with him. He's already shown himself to be quite clever with the media, and I just don't want to get into a public slanging match about what he did and what I did, and of course he's going to dispute what I say.
Newsroom's own earlier investigation found that Ross had relationships with other women during his affair with Dowie, and then there was his staff, many young women, many unwell from his controlling and bullying behaviour. Other people have described to me his lust for power. Did you experience that?
I think that in his world, in his narrative, you needed to understand that he was a political mastermind, that he was exceptional.
He thought that of himself.
Yes, yeah, he was exceptional, and he was destined to be a minister in the kitchen cabinet, if not the prime minister. And it's grandiose delusion, but that is what these characters run. This is their world. This is their reality. And if you don't buy into it, if you don't see it the way they see it, then you're wrong, or you're not good at your job, or you're not worth knowing. And they'll cut you, or they'll start a smear campaign to undermine you.
Does sound like a bad episode of House of Cards.
In his case, yes. It was one of his favourite shows.
When he was with you, he was, of course, having relationships with other women. Did you know?
In the initial phases of the relationship, I didn't know. But as the relationship moved on, I had suspicions, yes. I mean, I'm not going to out any women. I don't think that that's fair, but certainly when I look at some of the relationships that I know occurred, I can probably pinpoint why it happened and what was the basis for that relationship.
Are we talking about women in Parliament, journalists, other MPs? What are we talking about?
Yeah, certainly women within the parliamentary precinct, certainly women connected with his electorate and work in his electorate. Anywhere, or he would constantly survey a situation in his proximity and look for people that could provide him with something.
Are you saying he was finding people who could serve him?
Mm-hmm.
Serve him with what? Sex, information, what?
Sex, information, attention, but equally, all of these people will be going through their own process to recover from this abuse. And it takes time, and it takes work, and it takes effort.
Newsroom has interviewed another 9 people, many his staff, who say they've had long-lasting impacts from their encounters with Jami-Lee Ross. That's a lot of people.
Yeah.
And those are the
and that's
ones
what
that
we
have come
know.
forward.
That's who we know about. Exactly. That's who we know about. But equally, there's new staff that have come into his proximity.
Yeah, well, we know what's happened with them, don't we?
Yeah. So
I've just done a story on 3 of his recent staff, and he's left all of them traumatised as well.
Mm-hmm. I mean, the pattern continues, and it's this insatiable desire for control and energy and adoration returning to him to make him feel good.
And try and be the Prime Minister? Eventually.
Well, at the moment it's the MP for Botany. Let's start small.